Cameron Steele, a typical Los Angeles CEO, a workaholic, living in a world of numbers and deadlines, with almost no personal feelings. And then, boom! Sophie Bellwether, a brand new, clumsy temporary employee, in a hurry, accidentally walked into Cameron's Holy Land, dropped documents, almost fell, and caused an unbelievable mess. It couldn't have been a worse start. But this is where it gets interesting. The story doesn't stop at that embarrassing incident. How could an unknown girl, just a temporary employee with an unimpressive CV, catch the eye of a CEO who only cares about work? Could that fatal mistake be the unexpected spark, breaking Cameron's dry shell and revealing another person inside? Can feelings blossom from an awkward collision? Will the fragile boundary between CEO and temporary employee be erased or become an insurmountable barrier? Was this just a random coincidence, or was it fate that cleverly arranged it? If you're curious about how a mistake can lead to a love story full of surprises and sweetness, don't miss this one. Cameron Steele lives and breathes his work. His office on the top floor of Momentum Media, the beating heart of the Los Angeles media industry, is a testament to that. No personal photos, no extraneous decorations. Just stacks of documents arranged in an almost obsessive order, large computer screens displaying complex data charts, and an expensive leather chair where he seems to spend most of his time. The California sun streams through the large glass windows, but the atmosphere inside is still oppressively serious and focused. At 29, Cameron is the CEO of Momentum Media, a company he co-founded and brought to prominence with a sharp wit, foresight, and a near-fanatical dedication to his work. He is a machine efficient, a relentlessly analytical mind, but rather clumsy in non-business social interactions. Smiles are rare, small talk is almost non-existent. Lunch is usually a box of salad eaten hastily at his desk. Love, for Cameron, is a luxury, a time-consuming concept, and completely out of his 5-year plan. He had just finished a tense call with an investor in New York, his voice even, logical, without a trace of unnecessary emotion, despite the extremely important stage of the deal. He hung up, closed his eyes for a second, and rubbed his temples. Pressure was something he was used to, but sometimes the isolation of this work-centric world made him feel vaguely tired. Many floors away, in a completely different department, the event support department, Sophie Bellwether was feeling a little dizzy. It was only her second day at Momentum Media as a temporary employee on a 3-week project. Having just moved to LA from a small town in the Midwest, she was still overwhelmed by the size of the city and the breakneck pace of the prestigious media company. The office was a maze of open-plan desks, glass conference rooms, and identical hallways. Sophie was enthusiastic, smart, and genuinely excited about the opportunity to get involved in the media industry. But she also admitted that she was a little clumsy and had a poor sense of direction. "Sophie, hurry up and take this updated plan to the 40th floor conference room, room B, for Ms. Henderson right now." Her temporary manager's voice rang out urgently. "The meeting is about to start." Sophie quickly grabbed the thick file, her heart pounding with fear of being late. "Floor 40, room B." She muttered a mental note, rushing out of her work area, trying to recall the floor plan she had only glanced at. She pressed the elevator to the 40th floor, stepped out into the hallway, and scanned the area for signs. Ah, there it was, meeting room B. She quickly walked to the end of the hallway and saw a massive wooden door slightly ajar. That must be it. Not daring to delay any longer, she pushed the door open and entered, her mouth ready to apologize for being late. But the room she entered was not a meeting room full of people. It was an extremely large, luxurious, and eerily silent private office. And the only man in the room, sitting behind a giant desk, looking up at her with a look of surprise mixed with obvious annoyance, was Cameron Steele, the powerful CEO she had only caught a glimpse of from afar during the new employee introduction yesterday. "Oh!" Sophie cried out, shocked to realize her terrible mistake. She had gone to the wrong floor. This was the 45th floor, the executive office floor, and she had just barged into the CEO's private office. Her face was as red as a ripe tomato. In a fit of panic, her hands and feet became fumbled. The thick stack of documents slipped from her hands, clattering to the polished marble floor, papers flying everywhere. Worse, when she bent down to pick them up, she tripped over her own feet and almost fell, having to put her hands on the floor to keep her balance. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I got the wrong floor, wrong room, I'm leaving right now. She stammered, her voice trembling, her face burning with shame. She didn't even dare look the CEO in the eye, who was frowning at her. Cameron Steele froze for a moment. He was deep in thought about his new marketing strategy when the door suddenly opened and a young woman, looking frightened, rushed in, dropping documents and nearly falling to the floor. His office was a sacred, tightly controlled space. No one, not even his personal assistant, had ever dared to enter without notice. This sudden and chaotic appearance made him extremely uncomfortable. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice cold and curt, trying to contain his irritation. "What department?" He was sure he had never seen this girl on the list of senior personnel or people he regularly worked with. Sophie mumbled her name and the department she was temporarily working for, hurriedly collecting the scattered papers in an unsightly hunched position, wanting to disappear immediately. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll be leaving now." She almost ran out of the office, her heart pounding in her chest, her ears ringing with shame. She was going to get fired. How could she be so careless? Bursting into the CEO's office like a madman. Cameron watched as the girl disappeared behind the door. The frustration was still there, but mixed with it was a feeling of strangeness. The genuine confusion, the almost comical panic on her face, the way she stammered an apology and hurried away. It was all completely off script, breaking the tightly controlled monotony of his workday. He curled his lips slightly, an almost unconscious reaction that he hadn't even realized he had. Who was that girl? Sophie Bellwether? The name didn't sound familiar. It certainly wasn't on any of the important resumes he'd ever reviewed. He shook his head, trying to get the awkward image out of his head and get back to work. But somehow, the image of the strange girl's flushed cheeks and panicked eyes lingered in his mind longer than he had intended. After the break-in at the CEO's office, Sophie tried her best to avoid Cameron Steele. She took the stairs instead of the elevator when possible, kept her head down when walking through the hallways on higher floors, and always double-checked the room number before entering any place. The fear of being fired, or at least getting a cold stare from her boss, kept her awake. However, in a large and busy office building like Momentum Media, completely avoiding the CEO was impossible. They ran into each other in the crowded elevator in the morning. Sophie tried to squeeze herself into a corner, her heart pounding, but she could still feel Cameron's eyes flickering. Another time, they stood together in the break room waiting for coffee. An awkward silence fell between the noisy coffee grinders. Sophie just wanted to grab her coffee and disappear. Cameron, for his part, found himself unconsciously paying more attention to the troublemaker. He didn't look for her, but her presence, even if it was just a glimpse, stood out strangely among the familiar crowd of employees. He overheard a few compliments from her temporary project manager during a meeting. "That Sophie girl? A little clumsy but very hard-working, positive attitude, and does a great job." Another time, when he passed by the rooftop area for employees to rest during lunch, he saw Sophie sitting alone in a far corner, absorbed in sketching something in a small notebook. The sunlight shone on her honey-colored hair, her focused face exuding a peaceful and passionate look that was different from the panic he had seen. He stood still and watched for a while before turning away, a vague sense of curiosity arising. This girl was not just clumsy. Sophie also gradually had a different view of Cameron. She saw him calmly and decisively handle a small but potentially large-scale media incident, deftly protecting the company's image. She read an old article online praising his strategic vision when he first founded Momentum Media. She saw him pause and listen with genuine concentration as a subordinate presented a new idea, even as he offered blunt rebuttals. He was no longer the intimidating dry boss she had always seen. Behind that workaday facade was a remarkable mind, an incredible dedication, and perhaps a heart that wasn't quite as cold as she thought. The face-to-face interaction, though unexpected, did eventually occur. Late one afternoon, Cameron urgently needed an old market research report from last year that his assistant couldn't find in the electronic archives. He vaguely remembered it related to a project the event support department had worked on. He called the department, and it happened to be Sophie, who was staying late to finish up some work. "Hello, Momentum Media?" "Cameron Steele," his voice said, steady but urgent. "I need to find the market research report from last year's event X. Do you know where it is?" Sophie jumped a little at the sound of his name but quickly recovered. "Oh yes, Mr. Steele. I think there's a hard copy in the old filing cabinet in the basement. I'll go check it out." She quickly found the dusty report and brought it up to Cameron's office. He was waiting by the door, looking a little impatient. "Thank you," he said curtly as he took the file from her. Their fingers brushed. There was a moment of silence. "You're welcome," Sophie said softly, her face heating up. She was about to turn away when Cameron spoke up. "Miss Bellwether." "Yes?" "Why did you choose to work here temporarily?" The unexpected question surprised Sophie. He never asked anyone about personal matters. I just moved to LA," she hesitated. "I wanted to get some experience in the media industry, and this is a good opportunity." She didn't dare talk about her true situation. Cameron nodded, not asking any more questions. But that brief conversation, along with the accidental touch, left a strange echo. He found himself wanting to know more about this girl with the clear eyes and warm smile. He tried asking his assistant about Sophie's profile. "Sophie Bellwether? Just a temporary project worker boss, 3-week contract, nothing special about her profile, just a graduate, not much experience." Cameron was a little surprised. It turned out she was really just a temporary, a name that passed through the giant machinery of Momentum Media. Her name certainly wasn't on the impressive resumes he usually reviewed when looking for talent. So why was he so drawn to her? He realized that this attraction didn't come from her title, her experience, or anything superficial. He was drawn to her for who she was, genuine, warm, a little awkward, but full of life, whom a fateful mistake had brought before him. The invisible bond between Cameron and Sophie becomes more and more apparent through unplanned interactions. The real turning point comes at a big company project wrap-up party, held at a swanky event space in downtown LA. Sophie, as a temporary support worker, is there, though she feels a little out of place amid the fashionable crowd and the talk of multi-million-dollar deals. Cameron, as usual, is the center of attention, but he doesn't seem to be enjoying the social toasts. He stands alone in the corner, a glass of mineral water in his hand, his eyes absent-mindedly staring out the window. Sophie casually walks by, intending to ignore it, but then she sees a bartender accidentally knock over a tray of ice cubes right next to Cameron, making the floor slippery. Cameron, lost in thought, doesn't notice and almost trips. Sophie, reflexively faster than she can think, rushes forward and grabs his arm. "Watch out!" she exclaims. Cameron, startled, regained his balance and looked down at the small hand clutching his arm. He looked into Sophie's worried eyes. "Thank you," he said, his voice no longer cold, but rather surprised and genuinely warm. "I almost made a terrible show." They stood close together for a moment, the sudden contact making both of their hearts beat faster. Sophie quickly let go, her face flushed. "No, nothing." But that moment completely broke the ice. After that, Cameron took the initiative to talk to Sophie more at the party. He asked her about her feelings about the project, about her future plans after the end of the temporary contract. The conversation was more natural and comfortable than they expected. Cameron even laughed at Sophie's witty comment about a strangely dressed guest. It was a real smile, not a polite smile, and it made his face strangely attractive. Sophie also felt less shy. She shared about her passion for writing and her dream of working in the field of content creation. The unusual closeness between the CEO and the temporary employee did not escape the eyes of those around. Whispers began to arise. Why is the boss talking to that temporary girl for so long? They seem close? What is their intention? Both Cameron and Sophie are aware of the curious stares and the risk of gossip. They are also more aware of their growing feelings and the practical barriers. Sophie's temporary contract is up in just a week. Where will she go? What will she do next? Is this budding relationship just a fleeting infatuation, limited by location and circumstances? Sophie is confused. She likes Cameron, but she fears the huge differences between them, that she is just a temporary distraction in his busy life. Cameron is also struggling with his own internal conflict. He is attracted to Sophie because of the sincerity, warmth, and intelligence hidden behind her simple appearance. She brings a breath of fresh air to his work-only life. But he is the CEO. He has responsibilities to the company, to his employees. A romantic relationship with a subordinate, especially a temporary employee, is extremely sensitive. He was afraid of hurting Sophie, afraid of disrupting the work environment, and also afraid of himself. This dry, inexperienced man in love would know how to cultivate a real relationship? The last week of Sophie's contract passed in a strange atmosphere. The two tried to keep a professional distance, but their eyes found each other more often, and their accidental encounters became full of hidden meanings. On Sophie's last day of work, she went to say goodbye to Cameron. "Thank you for everything, Mr. Steele," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. "This was a valuable experience for me." Cameron looked at her, no longer cold. "Sophie," he called her name naturally. "Tonight, are you free? I want to invite you to dinner, not as CEO and employee, just Cameron and Sophie." His sudden and straightforward invitation stunned Sophie. Her heart skipped a beat. It was a bold move that both of them were hesitant to make. But looking into his sincere eyes, she knew she couldn't refuse. That fateful mistake was now opening a new door, a chance to write a different story, beyond the dry lines of a resume or a temporary contract. "Yes," she smiled, a bright and hopeful smile. "I'm free, Cameron." That dinner marked the official beginning of a new chapter in Cameron and Sophie's lives. Outside the glass walls of Momentum Media, without the barriers of titles or positions, they discovered completely different sides of each other. Cameron, a man who was used to talking about business strategy and numbers, was a little awkward but sincere when asking about Sophie's hobbies and family. He listened to her talk about her dream of writing, about the hardships she had gone through to get to LA, with an attention he rarely paid to anything outside of work. Sophie was also surprised to find Cameron talking passionately about old sci-fi movies, his love of hiking on weekends, although rare, and his secret loneliness that he had never admitted to anyone. When Sophie's temporary contract ended, they decided to take their relationship seriously. This was not easy. Rumors about their relationship still lingered in the company. To avoid conflicts of interest and unnecessary gossip, Cameron made a difficult but necessary decision. He asked Sophie to apply for a newly vacant junior content editor position at a Momentum Media subsidiary, based solely on her ability and passion for writing, without any interference from him. He believed in her abilities, and he wanted her to get the position on her own merit. Sophie excelled in the interviews and got the job. Not only does this give her a solid start, it also creates a much-needed professional distance between her and Cameron at work. Their lives gradually changed. Cameron began to learn to balance. He still worked hard, but he was no longer a 24/7 machine. He spent his weekends with Sophie exploring small, quiet cafes, going to the movies, or simply walking on the beach in Santa Monica. He found himself laughing more, relaxing more. Sophie's warmth and optimism were like a healing balm for his dry, tired soul. He realized that life had more meaning than growth charts and billion-dollar deals. Sophie also became more confident. Having a stable job that matched her passion, with Cameron's love and support, she felt empowered. She was no longer the shy, clumsy girl she used to be. She boldly expressed her ideas, contributed to her work, and gradually affirmed her own value in the new environment. She also helped Cameron open up more, encouraged him to reconnect with old hobbies and spend time for himself. Occasionally, they would laugh together as they recalled the day they first met, the day Sophie barged into the wrong office and caused a mess. That seemingly disastrous incident had now become a sweet memory, the beginning of their unexpected love story. One beautiful Sunday evening, Cameron and Sophie were sitting on the balcony of his apartment, watching the brilliant sunset over the Los Angeles sky. Sophie rested her head on Cameron's shoulder, holding a notebook in her hand, writing down ideas for her new story. Cameron wrapped his arms around her, feeling a sense of peace and complete happiness that he never thought he would have. "I used to think that everything in life had to be planned, had to be within the forecast," Cameron said softly, his voice warm. "But you came, completely unexpected, not in any of my plans or resumes." Sophie smiled, looking up at him. "Maybe the best things come in unexpected ways, right?" He leaned down and placed a gentle kiss on her lips. Yes, her name was not on the resume he was looking for, but fate had written her name into his heart in the most unexpected and beautiful way. The mistake of that day led two seemingly strangers to find each other, writing a love story full of surprises and romance in the heart of the City of Angels. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you like this content, don't forget to click like, share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.